Hi, welcome everyone to our Cecilia Health webinar all about diabetes and healthy eating, where we're really going to be focusing on what you can't eat and learn more about all you can eat. So thanks for participating with our webinar today. You will find here at the bottom of the screen, if you're having any type of technical difficulties, the number to call is 1-800-263-6317. And thank you again, everyone, for being here. And next slide, please. And just as a reminder, this is an interactive program, so our format includes a short presentation followed by some time for discussion. You will find in the toolbar there is a question section that if you have any questions, you can feel free to add that question there, and our presenter, Amy, will be able to come back to those questions here at the end of our time here. And just as a disclaimer, this presentation is intended to provide general information, general nutritional advice, and it represents the professional opinions of the Cecilia Health Certified Diabetes Care and Education Specialist. This information is not a substitute, though, for medical advice provided by any of your doctors. So here today we have Amy Smith. She is one of our registered dietitian and certified diabetes care and education specialist. A little bit about Amy. She graduated from the University of Houston with a Bachelor of Science in Human and Nutrition and Foods. She graduated from Texas Women's University with a Master of Science with a major in nutrition. She previously has experience at working at an outpatient, inpatient as a RD and a certified diabetes care and education specialist at a local hospital and local community clinic. She has been educating patients with diabetes and weight loss for the past 15 years. She lives in in Texas, and enjoys spending time with her family, doing outdoor activities, being active in her local community with her church, and traveling. So thank you all again for joining us today. I'm going to hand it off to Amy and she'll get us started. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily, so much for that wonderful introduction. I am super excited to be here today. This is one of my favorite topics to cover with everyone, and I really think that it's important that we focus on all the foods that we absolutely can eat, especially with managing our diabetes and just health in general. So this is one of my favorite quotes. I really do love this. When we think about food, we would love for all of our patients and friends to think about food as medicine, and not just oral pills as medicine, but food as medicine as well. So love getting started off with that and that beautiful picture of those blueberries. Now today on our agenda, we will be discussing diabetes and nutrition myths. We also will be discussing what to eat if you have diabetes, and then how to build better meals. That's a very popular topic. And then we will have time for a few questions and answers and sharing. So to get started real quick, here are a few truths or myths, and I just want you to think about these throughout our presentation. We won't necessarily answer them right now, but it is important to kind of think about if you fall into these categories or not based on what we're going to learn today. So it is recommended that Americans should eat 2 to 3 cups of vegetables today. Is that truth or a myth? Only 25% of Americans meet the recommendation for vegetable consumption each day. I wonder if you fall into any of those categories. And then the best diet for a person with diabetes is a low-carb diet. That is a popular one. And we'll see if that is a truth or a myth based on what we learn about today. So we're going to talk about the nutrition fundamentals to get started. And the 3 nutrients that provide calories and fuel for our body are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So to have a balanced diet, we really do want to try and have all 3 of these. So what exactly is a carbohydrate or carb? It's a very popular term that we talk about, starches as well as another word for that. So what is a carbohydrate? Well, we know that it provides fuel, and then that fuel breaks down to sugar in our body. directly affect our blood glucose levels and the readings on our meter, that sort of thing. So some carbohydrates carry water-soluble vitamins, fiber, and antioxidants as well. And then also we have proteins. So proteins provide the building blocks for every cell and structure in the human body. They're very important. And then last but certainly not least are fats. So fats actually provide fuel in the form of fatty acids. They also help to absorb fat-soluble vitamins, and some contain good fatty acids like omega-3s. Now, when we're thinking about these three different categories, we would really want to focus on the best choices in each category. So starting off with carbohydrates, there are vegetables that contain carbohydrates, and those would be called starchy vegetables. And it is important when we're thinking about starchy vegetables that we try and eat all the colors of the rainbow. So when we're talking about starchy vegetables, we would be talking about corn, peas, potatoes, sweet potatoes, that sort of thing. Whole fruits also contain carbohydrates. So even though we know that these foods are healthy and fruits are very healthy for us, they do contain carbohydrates. So we want to keep an eye on that. But whole fruits like apples, berries, of course, bananas, we all know about bananas, but then all the other fruits as well do contain carbohydrates in them. So we just want to keep that in mind. Beans are a very healthy plant-based protein, but they do have carbohydrates in them as well. They have lots of fiber. Then we have whole grains, and whole grains are great whenever we're looking at things like oats and brown rice and 100% whole grain breads. Other carbohydrates to take in consideration or other foods that a lot of people don't think have carbohydrates in them would be dairy products. So we have milk, yogurt. Cheese actually is fairly low in carbohydrates, but milk and yogurt do have a fair amount. Juices, of course, we all know about that. And then sweets or refined grains. Now, when it comes to proteins, there are lots of different options for people to get their protein intake, but we do recommend that you go with a lean protein if at all possible. That would be something like fish, lean poultry, lean beef, pork, eggs, tofu, and then low-fat cheese. And then lastly, we have fats. So the healthiest types of fats are going to be from things like nuts, seeds, avocados, canola oil, or olive oil. Other types of fats in our diet include butter, margarine, salad dressing, bacon, and peanut butter. And if you're thinking about getting a salad dressing, getting a light salad dressing is a good choice for salad dressings. Now, additional nutrients that promote health without providing any calories, which is good news, are vitamins, minerals, and water. So for vitamins, we're looking to make sure we get plenty of A, C, D, E, K, and the B vitamins. Of course, you can purchase those in a supplement form, in a gummy or in a pill. We do recommend you try and eat a variety of foods in your diet so you can get those vitamins right out of your foods. That's the best way for our body to absorb them. Next, we have minerals. We want to make sure that we have calcium, iron, zinc, magnesium, and potassium in our diet. And then lastly, we have water, carbonated water, and tea. So those are the three nutrients that promote health without providing calories. Now, we're going to move on and talk primarily about carbohydrates in this presentation today, because that's where most people have most of their questions. So here are a few general guidelines for planning carbohydrates in your meals, okay? So again, we would like for you to go with the recommendation of your primary care doctor above all things. And then also, as always, even throughout this presentation, remember with diabetes, we do have the glucometer or so the regular glucose meter or the continuous glucose monitors now as our guide. These are just general recommendations. But if you're starting from scratch for men, the recommendation is to start around 40 to 65 grams of carbohydrates per meal and possibly 15 to 30 grams of carbohydrates per snack. For women, the recommendation is around 30 to 45 grams per meal and around 0 to 15 grams of carbohydrates per snack. Again, always using your meter as your guide to know if you need to have a little less or if that is the right amount for you. Now, where do we look to find the carb content of foods? We are very fortunate this day and age that we have tons of food labels to reference. So the first place we're going to look at is food labels, and we will actually look at a food label in just a minute. The next place is you can actually search online. We know the internet can be a confusing place at times, but it is actually a good resource for different types of nutrition information. On Google, you can search something like how many carbohydrates are in an apple. And there are many healthy recipes or diabetes-friendly recipes online as well. You could even search something like low-carb, diabetes-friendly, healthy recipes. And there really is a good amount of information and recipes like that online available to us. Also, the popularity in apps has really grown exponentially over the past couple years. Here are a few of our favorites. MyFitnessPal, Lose It, and then my personal favorite is actually CalorieKing.com or the Calorie King app. It's been around for a very long time and is quite reliable as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at a nutrition label. There is a lot of information on these nutrition labels, but we're only going to focus on a few things today for the sake of time, and then also make sure you fully understand what you're looking at here. So when you pick up a packaged food, you want to turn around and see if you can find that nutrition facts label. The very first thing we're going to go ahead and look at is the serving size. So that's extremely important. And we can see here on this nutrition label that the serving size is 2/3 of a cup. Now, maybe we think to ourselves, have I ever actually measured out the serving size for this particular food? So that's something you might want to try every once in a while and grab your half cup, third cup, or your whole cup measuring cup from your kitchen and use that to measure out serving sizes of your favorite carbohydrates into a container or your bowls or plate or what have you, just a couple times until you see visually how it presents itself on your plate. But the serving size and the servings per container are extremely important, especially if you take a package of something and you eat all of it. For example, if you go to a gas station and pick up a bag of chips or a bag of popcorn, oftentimes the serving size is not the entire container. Most of the times there are multiple servings in that container. And so what we do in that instance is we would actually multiply everything in that container by the servings per container. So all the information below the amount per serving, we would multiply by the servings per container if we plan on eating the entire thing. Otherwise, you can just measure out your serving size, and everything below the amount per serving is going to be based on that 2/3 of a cup if we're looking at this particular nutrition label. Next thing we're going to look at is the total carbohydrate. So there's a lot of information unbolded under total carbohydrates. Really, we do want to focus on total carbohydrates though. So the more dietary fiber, the better, the less sugar, the better, but really it is all encompassing under that total carbohydrate there. We do also know very briefly that one serving of carbohydrate is about 15 total grams, and that's based on the average slice of bread. So if you start dividing that total carbohydrate by 15, you would get serving sizes. Maybe that's something, if you're interested in learning more about that, you can discuss that with your health coach on your next call. Okay, so this is one of my absolute favorite things to talk about moving on. So how do we actually create a diabetes-friendly meal for lunch and dinner really is what we're looking at this point. You might be thinking to yourself, does my plate look like this? Do I have half of my plate of non-starchy vegetables? And so it really in our mind, what we're trying to do is get our plate and then start filling it up with half of our plate full of all sorts of green things and non-starchy vegetables. So that can be a salad like you see here. That can be some steamed vegetables, stir-fry vegetables, fresh vegetables. There are just all sorts of options here. We do want to start with filling up half of our plate first. On the other side of our plate, we separate that in half. So in 1/4 of our plate, we would have our protein, and then whatever's left would be the last 1/4 of our plate, and we would fill that with our starch. One of the reasons why I love my plate planner the most is that it allows you to continue to eat the foods that you already have at home and the foods that you like to eat. You're just putting them in different portions. So you're putting that 50% non-starchy vegetables, 25% protein, and 25% carbohydrates. Also, as you can see here in green, you don't have to count anything or read any long lists of labels. You just need your 9-inch plate. Here's a few more ideas with the plate planner in terms of breakfast. So these are some ideas of things you could do. You could leave half of your plate empty or maybe put a small piece of fruit. Also, don't underestimate that some vegetables are delicious at breakfast. So if you do some stir-fried bell peppers with onions, and then maybe you have some eggs and a piece of toast, that would probably be one of my favorite breakfasts. And then also for lunch and dinner, there's lots of ways to add those non-starchy vegetables. I think leftovers are a really easy way to create a nice filling lunch as well. And then for a lot of people like to do maybe a little bit lighter on the vegetables and add a salad. Okay, so here are a few meal ideas. We're going to look at the total carbohydrate content and maybe how we could improve it a little bit for a few ideas, a few meals. And I think that this is helpful for most people to kind of get a realistic idea of what they were eating and then what we can do to improve it. So this is the pretty standard American breakfast. So a large bowl of cereal with some whole milk and a banana and then a glass of juice. That's pretty much the all-American breakfast. So surprisingly, that's around 90 grams of carbohydrates. And if females are trying to stick to around 45 grams or less per meal, that's definitely at least double the recommendation. So another idea might be to try a high fiber cereal, switch to low-fat milk or Greek yogurt, have just a handful of blueberries, and then 1 boiled egg, and that would cut that carbohydrate content in half. Additional breakfast ideas that are good breakfast ideas might be a cup of old-fashioned oats. Maybe you could add a tablespoon of chopped walnuts, tablespoon of ground flaxseed, and go ahead and just half that banana instead of having the whole thing. And we're looking there at about 45 grams of carbohydrates. Another idea is some scrambled eggs or egg whites. Again, talking about those onions and peppers to fill up on fiber and non-starchy vegetables at breakfast, adding sliced tomatoes, and then maybe having 1 slice of 100% whole wheat toast. So you're looking at about 20 grams of carbohydrates there, which is pretty low for breakfast. Now, lunch. Lunch is hard because a lot of people are on the go. We have individuals who work 5 days a week as well. So we really want to try and just make the best choice that we possibly can. So maybe a fast food restaurant is all that you have around you, and you are just used to having that bacon cheeseburger with a large order of fries and a large regular soda. Well, that would add up to easily around 195 grams of carbohydrates. And yes, you are seeing that correctly. 195 grams of carbohydrates is quite a bit. So maybe some better options would be trying something like a Southwest salad with grilled chicken, and even with the Southwest salad dressing, you're only looking at about 40 grams of carbohydrates. Also, if you really just have to have that burger, then maybe you swap to a small burger, a small French fry, and maybe some sliced apples, and switch to an unsweetened iced tea. You could even put a Truvia in that or a Splenda as well. And that's around 65 grams of carbohydrates, which is still a significant improvement from the original lunch at the top. Some better lunch ideas if you are at home and you have an opportunity to make a meal for lunchtime is definitely load up on those non-starchy vegetables with a large green salad. You can measure out a cup of chopped vegetables. You could add half a cup of beans, maybe some sliced almonds, add some fresh strawberries, and then a vinegar and oil dressing. That's around 40 grams of carbohydrates, and that sounds delicious. You might also enjoy some homemade tacos with 2 corn tortillas, some leftover chicken, half a cup of beans, 1/4 of an avocado, and some pico de gallo. That definitely would be a filling and satisfying lunch for just around 40 grams of carbohydrates. Now moving on to dinner. So whether you're eating out or you're eating at home, we have lots of options with dinner as well to swap out for better choices. So instead of chicken fried steak with a cup of mashed potatoes and a half a cup of corn with the small roll-in sweet tea, which would be around 115 grams of carbohydrates, you might easily swap to maybe a lean grilled steak, a small baked sweet potato, half a cup of steamed broccoli. Definitely get that side salad and some unsweetened iced tea. And you, again, are very significantly reducing that carb content down to around 40 grams of carbohydrates instead of 115. Another good option for dinner might be some grilled salmon with some roasted winter vegetables and some steamed spinach or other greens. And then sparkling waters are extremely popular right now. They don't have any carbohydrates in them. They're fizzy, kind of taste like you're drinking a soda, but you're not. As long as they have 0 grams of carbohydrates in them, they're a great addition to a meal. Not entire meals, around 40 grams of carbohydrates. Also, there still is a place for some stir fry as long as you are keeping an eye on your rice intake and your serving sizes there. So you could do some stir fried chicken, measure out that 2/3 cup of steamed brown rice. Make sure you've got some got it loaded with some vegetables like cabbage, celery, onions, mushrooms, red peppers, and green beans. And then obviously if you have a cup of hot tea and it's unsweetened, that would not contribute any carbohydrates. And you're around 45 grams for that meal. So moral of the story in terms of preparing your meals for lunch and dinner every day, the plate method is a very handy tool for planning a balanced meal. So just keep this in the back of your mind, and not just for at home. If you go to a restaurant, you can ask yourself, how can I follow the plate method at this restaurant? So maybe I add a salad to this meal and go ahead and rearrange it on your plate when it gets sent to you. Or if you go to a barbecue or a family function, this is one of my favorite tools to use during the holidays. You take your plate and you beeline it straight for the vegetables or straight for a salad. And if you're going somewhere that you don't think anyone is going to have any vegetables available, go ahead and bring that side with you. Offer to bring a side, bring a beautiful vegetable tray, bring a nice salad with you, and then you know that you already have that available for you to add to your meal, and you're contributing to the event as well. So let's go back to these truth and myths. So maybe we ask ourselves, after hearing all of that, it is recommended that Americans should eat 2 to 3 cups of vegetables per day. So is this a truth or a myth? We do believe that that is the truth. That is true. Only 25% of Americans meet the recommendation for vegetable consumption each day. We do believe that is true as well. So maybe ask yourself, based on the plate method, are you getting the recommended amount of vegetables per day? And then last but not least, the best diet for a person with diabetes is a low carb diet. We do believe that that is a myth. We do want to make sure that our carb intake is consistent at all of our meals. We want to be focusing on complex carbohydrates instead of refined carbohydrates, and definitely want to have healthy carbohydrates, so those starchy vegetables and fruit and whole grains. But low carb really is subject to many interpretations. And so really we just want about the same amount of carbohydrates at each meal to stabilize your blood sugars throughout the day. So bottom line, the good news is there are no foods that are off limits when you have diabetes, but it is important to practice portion control and make healthy food choices. So choose more of those non-starchy vegetables and those lean proteins, especially if you're hungry, you can load back up on those. We know that carbohydrates, which include fruits, starches, dairy, and sweets, are the foods that directly raise our blood sugar. So we just want to keep an eye on those and our portion sizes for those. We know that carbohydrates are not quote unquote bad, but whole carbohydrates provide more nutritional value than refined carbohydrates. So think, you know, a sweet potato versus Skittles. You're gonna get a lot more nutrition and fiber from the sweet potato than you would from something like candy or even juices. And then last but not least, we really do want you to keep in the forefront of your mind the diabetes plate method to balance your meals for lunch and dinner every day. And that's really the basic nutrition tool that we like to recommend you try and utilize for the rest of your life. So now we have a time for just a few questions. I want to thank you for being a very active audience and patient while we went through that presentation. I hope you learned something, and I'll go ahead and look in the chat and see if we have any questions real quick that I can answer before we go. No questions at all?
Amy, I see one question here that says, what do I do about my sugar cravings? I know what I should eat, but I still reach for a brownie or some ice cream. Great question.
That is a great question. Yeah, I don't see that question, so thanks for telling me that. Oh, sugar cravings. I actually really love talking about this. So if you like brownies, there are so many different chocolate options on the market right now. So I would say the most popular with the individuals that I work with in terms of chocolate is certainly looking at things that are already have built-in portion control. So in terms of sweets, the built-in portion control, I think, is the easiest way to manage those and build them into your day. So a lot of people like the sugar-free chocolate pudding with maybe a little bit of sugar-free Reddi-wip on top and maybe a few nuts. That seems to be a pretty decadent sweet for most people. Also, the little itty bitty mini ice cream bars or the little itty bitty like Blue Bunny ice cream, frozen ice cream novelties and things like that. Those seem to be very popular as well. The 100 calorie pack company has some really good sweet options as well. And so we know if it's portioned in 100 calories, it's around 15 grams of carbohydrates. So if you work in a little bit healthier option of a sweet throughout your day, even multiple times a day, maybe you have, you know, that chocolate pudding in the afternoon as a snack, but again, you have the individual portion size. And then you have a low carb dinner, but you have that little Blue Bunny frozen Greek yogurt ice cream at the end of your meal. Then you're getting your sweets, but you're certainly not overeating on them. And then also remembering to have good balanced meals, I would say, is important as well, because a lot of people aren't eating enough at their meals or eating enough vegetables and protein. And so if you really are hungry, it's harder to make better choices whenever you're physiologically hungry. So if we know we're eating good balanced meals, like following the plate method, then when we have a sweet later, we're not eating out of hunger, we're eating out of satisfaction, and we tend to make better choices that way. So I hope that helps answer your question. Any other questions, Emily, that you can see?
That's all that's listed here, unless if there's something else you want to add to anything.
I would say sweets in general, I really do believe in the portion control. So that was one thing I can just keep thinking about is the portion control. And then those, if you like ice cream, I have a lot of ice cream lovers that I work with. The Blue Bunny or the Yasso frozen Greek yogurt bars are really popular as well. So that portion control is important. So I think that's it. All righty. Well, I sure do appreciate you all being a very patient audience. I hope you learned something today. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. And let's see at what the next webinars that we have coming up. If you're interested in any more webinars, you can let your coach know and she can reiterate these for you or send you the email about them. But our next one is April 23rd at 6 p.m. And that topic is say no to diabetes complications, say yes to reducing your risk, and keeping your kidneys, nerves, and eyes healthy. Those are really important topics for us to review. And then in May, we will be covering safe and smart exercises for people with diabetes. And if you need more support, you can ask your health coach. And then you can also visit us on Facebook for some more information and tips. You can go to facebook.com/Cecilia Health. So thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your attendance and participation. I hope you have a great rest of your week.